A matter of time. That's right, Doctor. I'm 252 years old. Mr. Stewart moved a little in his chair. His mouth was dry and his hands felt sweaty. He was afraid the doctor would ask him to leave. Mr. Stewart, there is nothing wrong with you. The doctor tried to pretend he hadn't heard Mr. Stewart. He held up the results of Mr. Stewart's medical examination. Your blood pressure is normal. The other tests show nothing. No problems at all. You have the body of a man of 25. The doctor sat down again. He hoped this new patient wasn't as mad as he seemed to be. Doctor, I was born on March the 24th, 1738, Mr. Stewart said calmly but firmly. I know that must be hard for you to believe, but it's true. He started to raise his voice. I have no reason to lie to you. Calm down, young man, the doctor said. If you have a story to tell, I'll listen. Thank you. Mr. Stewart leaned forward in his chair. He looked up at the painting on the wall above the doctor's desk. I was born in a house that looked a lot like the barn in that painting. My father was a blacksmith. He died when I was 26. That's when it started. When what started? Asked the doctor. I noticed that my friends were getting older and I wasn't. At first it didn't bother me. It was after I got married that the real trouble began. My wife got older as the years went by, but I stayed the same. One winter she fell ill and died. At the funeral, people thought I was her son. I'm sorry, said the doctor. When was this? I think it was the winter of 1789. I started to move around a lot after my wife died. It caused me less trouble if people didn't know me for too long. I tried marriage again in 1805. I was 67 then, but I still looked like a young man. Anyway, my wife and I had 5 children. I outlived her and each of the children too. After Constance died, I started moving again. During World War I joined up. Everyone else was joining up, and I thought maybe the war would solve my problem. Lots of people die in war, you know, but nothing happened to me. One week we were shelled heavily by the Germans and thousands of men were killed. I remember walking across the battlefield just after it was over. It was spring. The birds were singing. The trees were starting to bloom again. There were thousands of dead soldiers all over the battlefield. I envied them, Doctor. I envied those dead soldiers, even though some of them were just boys. By then I was 176 years old. I knew then that I wasn't going to die. That's quite a story, Mr. Stewart. The doctor looked over the edge of his glasses at his patient. But human bodies don't last that long. Everyone dies. It's just a matter of time. Mr. Stewart continued, as if he hadn't heard him. In 1938, I met Phyllis. All my experience told me that I should leave her alone. But my heart wouldn't listen. We got married and had the last 50 years together. She died last week, Doctor. That's why I'm here, he said in a low voice. I don't want to live any longer. And what is it you want me to do, Mr. Stewart? I want you to help me die, Doctor. The doctor stared at Mr. Stewart. His face looked both kind and sad. He chose his words carefully. Even if I believe your story, Mr. Stewart, what can I do? I'm a doctor. It's not my job to help people die. But I can see you are in great distress, and I'm sorry about that. He picked up the prescription pad from his desk and began writing. I'm going to give you something to help you, he said. Any chemist will be able to dispense this. Take it. The doctor handed the prescription across the desk. Mrs. Stewart took it and put it in his pocket. Thank you, he said. Thank you so much. The doctor walked with Mrs. Stewart into the waiting room. The receptionist was working on some papers. Thank you again, Doctor, said Mrs. Stewart, reaching for the doctor's hand. I'm so grateful. After Mrs. Stewart left, the doctor turned to the receptionist. That man said he was 252 years old, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. The receptionist looked up from her papers. Really? What did he want? Something to help him die, said the doctor. His story was very convincing. I felt sorry for him, so I prescribed what any good doctor would, under the circumstances. He winked at the receptionist. Sugar pills.